Don't play yourself, love yourself. Let's talk about it.
Hey, come on in for a cup of tea with your favorite uncle.
Hey, nieces, nibblings, nephews, and other fam. Thank you so much for tuning in to the third episode of Tea with Robert, your favorite Black gay uncle. So, we are going to get into it. Don't play yourself, love yourself. What are we going to talk about today? Well, I want to share one of three things. A, how I used to play myself as a Black gay man as it relates to other Black gay men. B, what I did and how I addressed and approached that. And C, hopefully leave you all with some tips and just some life lessons from my experience to hopefully make your path a little easier. As a Black cisgender gay man, that's my lived experience. And so, speaking from that, I do want to give a disclaimer is that some of the things I'm talking about today relate specifically to Black gay men and the experiences that they have had, they're having, and unfortunately will still have. But hopefully, this conversation will add to the mix and hopefully help that be a little better. So, while storytelling and self love and talking about building confidence yourself are universal, I do just want to give a heads up. That being said, as I was preparing for this episode, um, many of you may be familiar, but there was a TikTok that had gone quite viral. It's this individual named Extreme Yapper. He's a Black gay man, and he was talking about his experiences with racism on Grindr, which I don't know anybody who was surprised by that. But he had also made the comment in which he had said that he doesn't date other Black gay men. And it really gave me a moment of pause and reflection and kind of informed um, this episode. So, first, let's get into how I used to play myself. So, we listen and we don't judge, right? I used to be a Black gay man that said to other Black gay men, I don't date Black men. It hurts to say it, it hurts to admit it. I can chalk it up to being young and uninformed, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I used to say that in my late teens and early 20s. And so I had made a short over the weekend that was quite popular and led to a lot of great conversation, talking about the myth that Black people are more homophobic than others. And so, in that, I had shared that unpacking that myth had been helpful to my own discovery of self love and confidence and being able to appreciate Black queer people more in an invaluable way. And so, certainly, part of that myth and hearing that and believing that as a young person certainly made me see white spaces and white gay men, particularly, as more safe, which um, is not. Which we know is not true. But in addition to that, it was certainly not having awareness to address my own internalized bias, my own internalized homophobia and racism. And then also, I think is that for me, I had thought that that was a normal thing to say. And so let me unpack that, which is that so I became sexually active when I was young, younger than I'd like to admit, but I was a teenager. And my first kind of real interaction with other men who at least slept with other men was through cruising spots in Pittsburgh. If you're not familiar, cruising spots are usually public locations where men come across each other and make connections. So it's kind of like the original grinder before smartphones were around. And so in those spaces, I had heard from white and Black men who would tell me that they don't have sex with other Black gay men. And so as I started making gay and other queer friends in my early 20s when I first started coming out, I had really thought that that was a normal thing to say because I had heard it. And so, yeah, not a good look. And I really regret that time period. So, what were the circumstances that changed? What happened that made me begin to love myself? To really address the reasons why I was making this comment. So A couple things here, which is the library is always for me. I love a good book. And so two books really stand out. And first book I came across is James Baldwin, Giovanni's Room. It was my first Baldwin novel, as well as the first book I read where I imagined the lead as a gay black man. The second book I remember reading was Hip Hop Generation by Bakari Kidwana. And that book was really powerful because it helped me connect with what a wonderful time it was to grow up as a black kid in the 80s and a black teenager in the 90s. You know, it was 106 in Park, BET, black comedies. We had the WB network with black shows. We had the black girl groups, SWV and Jade and Early Destiny's Child. We had the black girls running up the charts, Brandy, Aaliyah, Monica, Maya. I feel like God would have clowned me had I not said In Vogue, greatest girl group ever. And it really helped me, pause and recollect and really take ownership of what a wonderful thing it was to be a black millennial. But I will say there was still some separation between. I was still seeing that I had to be black or gay, and one of the main catalysts that helped change that was I remember the first time I went to Washington D.C., which was about a 4-hour drive from Pittsburgh. And so I went to visit a friend who was not a black person. And so I went to go visit her at work. She was supposed to finish early and we were going to go out. However, she couldn't get off. But she had made arrangements for me to connect with some friends that she had made. And I remember when she walked me over to this group, and it was all black gay men my age. And I remember how nervous I was, how anxious that I felt a little bit. Were they going to accept me? Was I going to be, you know, too black, not black enough, too gay, not gay enough? And so I remember the love that I got amongst that group, the reception, and how the conversation that we had, and everyone was talking about, work and what degrees they were working on, and going to Howard, and it was just such a beautiful moment, and it was the first time that I had ever really felt like I was with a group of pairs of black and gay men, and these were not black gay men who were in torment or of themselves. They were really out and proud, and we had such a great night. We went to all these parties, and it was all black queer people, and we went to the Fireplace, which I believe is still open, which is a black gay club in DC. And you know, that night really changed my life. It really helped open my eyes and let a flood of love pour in. And so, all of that to say is that I can make a connection to my own self image and my own self confidence to my sexual desires and choices, where I began to separate the difference between wanting to have a white partner for that false sense of security or safety or, um, my own internal bias versus wanting to have a partner who happens to be. And I really began to see the beauty um, in um, in black men and Asian men and Latino men. And so, yeah, so that's my journey, as painful as it is. And so, what I recall later on in time as well is I remember in my early 30s, I was still living in Pittsburgh, and I had a huge crush on this man who happened to be black. Oh, I still think he was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. But I remember coming up to him and being like, hey, I would love to take you out on a date. And he said those words to me that I had said so many times before, which was, I don't date black men. And I remember the hurts, I remember the disappointment, but I also remember the grace that I had showed him in that moment, because the grace I had showed myself to allow myself to go onto that journey of self discovery, the amount of work it took to unpack how harmful that sentence is. Um, and I remember saying to myself, he's on his journey, I'm on mine, and we're obviously in two different places. And so, yeah, that was a key pivotal moment. So, lastly, why is this important? Well, I'm not here to tell anybody how to live their life. That's for sure. I cannot do that. I can barely live my own life. But if there is something that I can say to Black gay men in particular, Black queer people in general, and of course anybody who's watching this who's resonating with this story of self-love and self-discovery, is a relationship can be healing. However, it cannot do the work of taking care of ourselves, the work of self love, the work of unpacking all the biases and stereotypes that we gather over the years. And so, we all have our likes and dislikes. We all have things that we find attractive, some more than others. And that does influence, obviously, the people whom we choose to date or whom we choose to have sex with. And so, what I would say is just to be mindful and spend some time reflecting on why you're making those choices. And is it coming from an honest place of liking, or is it coming from a place that is misinformed? Because we don't live in a world that's kind to Black people, and we don't live in a world that's kind to queer people. And that can certainly make us feel like we need to find people who can give us that sense of security. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Black gay boy. You are a gem. You are a gift. Your melanin and your curly hair and your big nose and your beautiful cheeks. You are a gift to the world. And don't let anyone tell you that you are nothing but what you are, which is a child of God. Black baby Jesus, Buddha Muhammad, Elia Rachel, she has blessed you and will continue blessing with you as long as you find love for yourself and love for others. All right. Your Black gay uncle loves you. I'm rooting for you, and I'll see you soon. Hey, you want to like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know what you want to hear from your Black gay uncle.